Welcome everyone to Regenerative Agriculture Day 2022. We're so happy to have you all here with us. And just for reference, we've had at least two of these in the past years. One was in person at the State Land Office, and one was online last year. And there's a thread that runs through all of these. And we're going to have Matthew Denenclaw share the thread from last year to this year. But I just wanted to introduce today's event and again, welcome you all. The purpose of the Regen Ag Day 2022 is to bring agencies together and the community together, really to bring agencies and community together and to build up community solutions. Also to brainstorm possible pilot projects, community-driven soil health pilot projects. In terms of building up community solutions, I want to acknowledge Will Barnes from the State Land Office, who said, the challenges we face all have community solutions. And I think that's so true. And the way I think of community is by symbiosis, a mutual beneficial relationship between humans and nature. And an example of that are microorganisms that live in our gut biome. And we are hosting them and they feed through us, but at the same time, we need them to survive and they make our health better and stronger. And by the way we eat, we can make the microorganisms in our gut health stronger. And that's why soil health is so vital for so many reasons, but one of them is for the health that stems from our core. So I also think there's a value in thinking about soil health principles when we think about community. The soil health principle of diversity versus monocultures. I think through diversity, we are stronger together. And I do acknowledge when we speak of community, Martin Luther King's reference to beloved community, which we can create here in New Mexico with our beloved sun symbol. We have the great opportunity to have many cultures coming together for a greater purpose than ourselves. And so without further ado, I want to welcome everyone again and let's get started. Isabel will introduce the speakers to come.
I think first we have Matt do a little recap of our previous soil Regenerative Ag Day. Matthew.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you, Rob. Yep, just to continue to, cannot press enough to thank everyone for joining today, whether you're a state elected official, a tribal official, or staff members under one of the two. Thank you again for your presence. It's an absolute honor. And of course, all the thank yous and gratitude for, most importantly, our producers who manage and work the lands here in New Mexico, both on state lands and tribal and all things in between. So really, it's an absolute honor. Yes, my name is Matthew Denenclaw from Shiprock, New Mexico, where I pride myself and our family on being ranchers and farmers here for more than 5 generations, and this is a lifestyle that is absolutely bred into us, that we live, eat, and breathe every day. On top of that, I do work for the Intertribal Agriculture Council as a national program specialist now, and that's been an absolute honor relative to my professional development and working alongside producers, not just in the Navajo region, but now nationwide. And of course, these connections with Isabel, Rob, and our all of our many collaborators that made this event possible is what we're really seeing today in terms of the rewards. So with that being said, we just talk a little bit about what happened last year. And if you watch the video that was linked in the email provided, this will definitely be old hat to you. But in the meantime, we just want to kind of present some highlights anyway of what happened last year. And of course, I'll do that here by voice. But from Regenerative Ag Day of 2021, we talked about what we would see in the immediate consensus there, that in everyone's dream, of course, is green. You know, we want to see healthy lands and healthy people and healthy livestock and that, of course, all stems from, again, healthy soil leading to healthy rangeland and again, just seeing green overall and hoping to mitigate the effects of drought and all these current challenges that we face today. We talked about what we would hear. And again, the majority of answers was really deeply rooted and connected in with nature. Just talking about all the different things that can be heard, whether it's out in the rangelands and our forests and all places in between. We talked about, what would it feel like? And of course, everyone's answer there was very relative in terms of a positive feeling. Whether we're talking about enjoying the rain, seeing more diverse species of life, okay, in and out of all of our in our current lands that we manage. We talk about what it would feel like, and of course, everyone again pretty much would talk about it being healthy. What is one core value of regenerative agriculture for you? And this is it was a pretty interesting question because it spurred a lot of conversation, not just around principles, relative to soil health, but also talking about, working together and being more cohesive as people and as folks who work to manage these lands. The following question next to that was, what needs to happen to bring this vision to life? And I think the consensus is very clear, based around collaboration and creating a real community type environment. From there, we talked about how can you or how can I contribute to make this happen? And for many of the producers, obviously their answer is they want to be a stakeholder in regenerating the land through the land management practices that they want to discuss and learn and share ideas with from those who are more staff based members in the land management. They want to offer that additional knowledge and imagination and creativity. The last question there was, if you had the $1 million to support this effort, how would you use it? And again, another really bold consensus that was considered was just offering more outreach and education for producers on the ground and really kind of getting back down to the grassroots level in working with our producers. So with that being said, thank you again for this opportunity. I'll pass it now back to Ms. Isabel.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, my name is Isabel Jeniches. I'm the co-founder of the New Mexico Healthy Soil Working Group. We are grassroots advocates behind the New Mexico Healthy Soil Act, and it's our mission to support farmers and ranchers in adopting management principles that result in greater soil health and also associated co-benefits. And one of our core tenets is collaboration and teamwork. And so that's how we began working with the State Land Office, the Intertribal Agriculture Council, and the First Nations Development Institute. And that was about a year ago, really. We got together once a month and through a series of visioning exercises, recognized the power of community in effecting positive change on our landscapes. One coalition member describes it this way: state and federal departments, tribes, and private landowners find a way to work towards solutions that are community-driven, sustained through adequate resources, and that the lands are protected, restored, and bettered for future generations. So in order to work towards this vision, we saw the need to bring agencies and the community together, which you already have heard. And so this led us to organizing today, this day, Regenerative Agriculture Day, with all of you. And so with this, I'd like to pass the mic over to our valued partners in this collaboration. And you can see the backgrounds, we share all these backgrounds. And first, I'm honored to introduce Commissioner Garcia Richard of the New Mexico State Land Office. Thank you so much for being here, Commissioner.
Thank you, Isabel, and thanks to the Healthy Soils Working Group for having me. What better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than with the beloved community? And Matthew, this is for you. I changed my background so that I could be present with you there in Shiprock. So I am Stephanie Garcia Richard, State Land Commissioner. And for those of you who may be new to this effort and this work, as you have heard, we've been part of Healthy Soils at the Land Office since 2019. We hosted the first Regen Ag Day in 2020, February 14th, just before the pandemic hit, in fact, and we look forward, hopefully soon, to hosting something else again in the near future. So please keep us in mind for that. And you will see both from our participation in hosting that day, but also our members of New Mexico State Land Office who participate in the Healthy Soils Working Group. I hope you will see the commitment from the State Land Office to soil health. With our 8 million surface acres leased up as working lands for agriculture, and our partnership with 3,500 ag lessees across the state, soil health is really at the heart of what we do. We can't have our dual purpose of generating revenue and preserving the health of the resource for generations to come without an emphasis on soil health. So this is really key to what we do. And I just wanted to mention one in a series of many partnerships, but one particular pilot and partnership that we are participating in with the Quivira Coalition on the biochar, on their biochar project. And for those of you who don't know, biochar is a soil component that is basically burning biomass until just before you get ash, so that it has porosity and an ability to retain water. And we are looking at adding that particular element to soil across our ag leases. And so we are piloting with Sandia Pueblo, State Forestry, Highlands University, and private landowners to look at ways that biochar can be a healthy component of soils. So it's my great privilege to have folks from the Land Office and the Surface Division, our experts, participate today. And I just wanted to be on very briefly to greet you and hope great things for the coming conversations that are going to happen today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you for all of your staff too, for being here. And it's been a pleasure working with you all. Next, I want to call on Jackie to introduce the First Nations Development Institute.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Jackie Frankie with First Nations Development Institute. I come from you in my office in Albuquerque. First Nations Development Institute, we're a national Native nonprofit, and one of our mission is to strengthen American Indian economies on a national scale with tribal communities, Native American producers, and landowners. One of our programs that my colleagues are joining you from is our Stewarding Native Lands program. So it's a pleasure to be here. I don't want to take up much time, but I do invite you to visit our website at www.firstnations.org to learn more about our conservation land stewardship initiative. So welcome, everyone. Great to be here. And I will pass it to Desba to make her introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Hello, everyone. My name is Desba Padilla, and I work as a technical assistant specialist for the Intertribal Agriculture Council, representing the Southwest region. We are also a national nonprofit organization that was formed in 1987 to further the goals of improving Indian agriculture. The Intertribal Ag Council continues to work on improving legal and policy development, USDA technical assistance, natural resources management, marketing support, and Native youth development. I appreciate the opportunity to share this collaboration with the Healthy Soils Working Group, First Nations Development Institute, and the State Land Office. Thank you, and I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you, Despa. Thank you, Jackie. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with all of you and your colleagues. So this concludes the introductions. We have an invocation from James Skeet with Spirit Farm and Covenant Pathways, and I invite James to share his invocation with us.
Let's pause for a moment just to send out some prayers. O great Spirit, whose voice we hear in the wind, whose breath breathes life to all the world, hear us. We need your strength and wisdom, especially in this time. Let us walk in beauty and make our eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make our hands respect the things you have made, and our ears sharp to hear your voice. Make us wise so that we may understand the things you have taught our people. Help us to remain calm and strong in the face of all that comes toward us. Let us learn the lesson you have hidden in every leaf and rock. Help us seek pure thoughts and act with the intention of helping others. Help us find compassion without empathy overwhelming us. We seek strength not to be greater than our brothers, but to fight my greatest enemy, which is ourselves. Make us always ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes. So when life fades as the fading sunset, our spirit may come to you without shame. May you always walk in beauty. Rugged knee-high, rugged knee-high, rugged knee-high, honey-oh. Rugged knee-high, rugged knee-high, rugged knee-high, honey-oh. Elohim, 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 rugged knee-high, rugged knee-high, honey-oh.
Thank you, James. We'll have a keynote now from Aaron Lowden with the Pueblo of Acoma, and Shantou Grey Eyes will introduce him.
Good evening, everyone. So Aaron Lowden is, to me, a fantastic colleague, as well as, in his own right, he's a traditional farmer, a land-based skills instructor, a seed caretaker from the Pueblo of Acoma. The better part of the last 2 decades, he's been, working with the National Park Service, Rivers and Trails, and the Conservation Assistance Fellowship, leading trail feasibility studies and youth outreach programming. Aaron later joined the Acoma Ancestral Lands Program, where he served as a crew leader, a program coordinator, and most recently a program manager. During his time with Ancestral Lands, he has recruited, managed, and mentored crews to collaboratively complete land-based service learning projects, including tribal historic preservation, environmental restoration, and public recreation infrastructure development. In 2012, Aaron established the Acoma Ancestral Lands flagship program, the Acoma Farm Corps. As a lifelong student of the tribe's traditional ecological and agricultural knowledge systems, he has led, developed, and instructed the program's agricultural initiatives to restore Acoma's traditional food systems through the Acoma Farm Corps. Aaron has taught local youth skills to Acoma traditional food practices, including cultivation, preparation, and design of dryland irrigated and drip irrigation techniques, seed selection, saving and banking, and traditional food preparation. With a strong passion for his work, he has created and facilitated the Acoma Ancestral Lands Seed Bank, as well as food sovereignty gatherings and workshops for the Acoma community and tribal partners. He is now working with Native American workshops for the Acoma community and Food Sovereignty Alliance as the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network Program Coordinator to nourish and assist the growing seed sovereignty movement across Turtle Island by providing educational resources, mentorship training, outreach, and advocacy on seed policy issues, and organizing national and regional events and convenings to connect many communities who are engaging in this vital work. Let us welcome Aaron Lowden, our keynote. Thank you.
All right. Well, shantou. Just one real quick. I do have some pictures and photos. Is it okay? Am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to, yes.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much. Looks like it's working. All right. Well, first I'd just like to say, well, Gawati hopa, Gaita hopa, try shop. What those me koi erste koi hanostata, hako me hanostata, yaku kochin washlista. Well, just to introduce myself, my name is Aaron Lowden. I also have my name there up there, which is Kauai, which is my Acoma name. I come from the Bear Clan people in Acoma and our little Yellow Corn clan from my father's side. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you all for being here, and thank you for allowing me in your space today. It's very much appreciated. You all can see my little slide here, but with this part here, we have some photos in the background you'll see from our work, as well as historic photos from Acoma, as well as surrounding Pueblos, Pueblo nations, Dene nations, and Hopi nations. So you can see right there just the history of agriculture and just here in just the Southwest area. And so just gonna go scroll through them. But I've been doing this work for the past 10 years, as Shantou mentioned in the bio. And a lot of my work has been involved around, revitalizing seed and traditional ecological knowledge, cultural worldviews, food access to my community here in Acoma Pueblo. I've been pretty much born and raised here my whole life. We also work in the past worked on land-based restorative service learning projects, youth recreation projects. So, and that's where my passion lies, though, is in the food systems work. So right now I'm working with the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance as the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network Program Coordinator. So specialize in seed, but for across Turtle Island now. So I'm very thankful to be in the space and to talk a bit about what I was asked to here as far as regenerative agriculture. And so I was raised all my life here in Acoma, which translates to Haku, which is Haku, but translates to the place prepared. And we were prepared with instructions and principles on caretaking for our collective inheritance and future. And right now, I always acknowledge in the beginning, starting off, that everything I say and everything I speak of today was cultivated on soils of generational inherited knowledge. And that's through our ancestors, family ties, friends, sister indigenous villages and nations. And so that's definitely something that I like to acknowledge, and that none of this knowledge is really mine, but inherited knowledge that I like to communicate to everybody. And indigenous peoples have generations of science and knowledge based on centuries of observation and trial and error. All of the knowledge that we've inherited is through really just feast and famine, through all these different disruptions to our food systems, through whether that's through climate change, through colonization. And so all of these things we've learned a lot of lessons from. And so that's what I've seen in some of my work and some of the value that I've seen in the work that that we do in ACMA, and to restore that knowledge and to bring that knowledge back to our community. And so I even quote this, there was a federal agent that I found an excerpt from. He was the superintendent of the US Federal Indian Agency at the time, and they used to send these different, they call them federal Indian farmers to go and assist communities and teach them modern ways of practicing agriculture in their communities. And so it's interesting to hear these stories. And there's even stories of in the past of how they refused to actually use machinery. They refused the mechanical threshers they were given to separate the wheat from the chaff. They're giving different mechanical items, tractors and trailers and things like that, but they refused for a long time. And so during that area, they couldn't gather, they couldn't get to the young children, but they couldn't get to the adults, and the adults were very resistant. So they went to the children. And so that's when you saw a lot of, assimilation and re-education through boarding schools and different schools even located on the reservation. And so you saw a lot of assimilation and destruction of cultural knowledge during that time, and sort of this gaslighting of not seeing our knowledge as something valid. And so when I read this quote, I heard this quote, it was something that was actually reaffirmed that that our knowledge was something that was significant and very much based in our practices, and which were based in seeing life as something that needs to be caretaking. And so this quote, it says that the Acoma people had the greatest teachers, stern necessity with famine on their heels. It would seem rather idle to increase the knowledge of these ancient people. They know 10,000 times more than any Indian service farmer that comes from the West. And so when I read that, we get to see a appreciation, reaffirmation, and validation of that knowledge there, even back to almost by the turn of the century in the 1900s. One of the most challenging ideas that came, one of the most life-changing ideas that came to me was through my late uncle. His name was Ron Charlie. He taught me everything I know about agriculture, as well as my family's knowledge. And he was a very big knowledge keeper within our family and community. But one of the things he taught me most is that everything has a life, and that all life has to be nurtured. Our prayers put the land, waters, animals, plant life, and community before ourselves. And that, what I always took from that, it teaches interdependence, and to show that we are part of that ecosystem. We understand that all life is really interconnected. All beings that sustain one another, they all really rely on and are interdependent on one another. The people, the Hanu, are dependent on these relatives. If we remove any of those non-human relatives, we see an imbalance and collapse of the symbiotic ecosystems, which is really why I value the opinions of farmers. They see the impacts when life is out of balance, when the wildlife is hungry, when the plant life is thirsty, when the soil is unhealthy, and the water is absent or contaminated. One of my mentors, her name is Teresa Pasquale. She led a lot of our cultural resource protections in Acoma. She protected Mount Taylor from uranium development. She also worked on protecting our Circuit Salt Lake that we share with the Zuni and other Pueblos from other impacts and resource extraction in the areas. And one thing she said to me in one of our talks, she said that farmers really understand these things because they see the impacts to the land. They're out there constantly every day and looking where the water's coming from, where the cloud's coming from, what's eating my garden, how's the soil doing. They see all that and they observe it. And so when you get to see all those things, and you get to understand that when any of those beings we depend on are impacted, we get to understand that I'm impacted and that I'm part of those systems. Those that understand this really inherently understand that we must intentionally reciprocate and caretake, protect all life, because a threat to any of those beings is a threat to me and my community, and a threat to ourselves and each other. And so I just want to point out this because there tends to be a compartmentalization of these systems when we talk about regenerative agriculture and soils. And I heard a saying secondhand through a good farmer friend of mine who lives up in Espanola, and who heard from one of his elders out there. And he always says, you know, they always peg our community as primitive, but if we're so far behind, then we're ahead. And I really appreciated that sentiment, because to me, in a simple way, it articulates that many of these old knowledges that were once labeled as primitive are much more complex and in line with the caretaking needed to sustain that life. Lately, I've been studying the work of Adriana Marie Brown. She's done a lot of great work around her book and work around emergent strategy. One part of emergent strategy that I've seen and understand really well, and you see, and she actually acknowledges very well in the book, that Indigenous people were some of the first cultivators of emergent strategy. And one of those parts of emergent strategy is biomimicry, which is the imitation of systems of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. And so we look to nature all the time to figure out what do we do, how do we do things. In Acoma, there's been stories of looking at the swallows to teach us how we build our homes. They built the cliff swallows, they built their homes on the edges of the mesas like cliff dwellers, like our ancestors did. And they build it with mud, and they compose, and they live in little compartments with each other, next to each other, and live communally. And so those are just some examples of biomimicry that we've seen, and we know that we have stories of. And so as she notes that this is something that Indigenous people are very fluent in, and land-based people in general are very fluent in. And to me, it's interesting that there are natural repeating patterns we find at the largest scale and at the smallest scales of life. And we call these fractals. The complex microorganisms that compose our soils, like the fungi, mycelial networks, the bacteria, the insects, and organic material, they all work together in tandem and repeat patterns to produce the fertile soil that we hope will produce and sustain our sustenance, our lives. Nothing in nature works in isolation. And just 1 teaspoon of good soil, I'm told that there is up to 1 billion individual living organisms. There's no individualism in nature because nature has no use for it. So when you all proceed with your gathering and proceed with all of the collaborative work with each other, and as someone had already noted before me, that there's repeating patterns in nature that we see constantly of people, of individuals and beings working together to create that symbiotic relationship with one another. And that's, I think, what we need to repeat in all of our circles, in all of our work, and that collaboration is necessary. I was invited by my friend Jackie Frankie with First Nations to speak about working in regenerative agriculture and soils and working as a community. And I was reminded this really beautiful excerpt when Adriana Marie Brown states in her book. She says that birds don't plan to migrate. They feel it in their bodies that they must go, and they follow it, responding to each other's, each bringing their adaptations. There's an art in flocking, staying separate enough to not crowd each other, aligned enough to maintain the shared direction, and cohesive enough to always move forward each other. And that's what you learn in community. That's what you learn by replicating nature, that we all work collaboratively and that we're all interdependent on each other, and we're not in isolation. What we pay attention to grows, and that there's a reason we're all here together. So I hope that everybody can pay attention to maybe the hopes and some of your dreams of a world where we all work like these networks we see in nature. The past couple of years have been really difficult, especially for those of our communities that are most vulnerable, that have the most disproportionate allocation and of resources. And so it's been really difficult for a lot of our folks, but one of the, I hope that one of the positives we've seen out of this time, and one of my biggest hopes for when we're all able to come back together safely, is that we'll appreciate that more, and that we'll move more fluidly and well together, because we're all relations, we're all in a relation to one another, and that we'll be more whole because we know how heavy it is to be alone, and that there's so much work to do. I was reminded of this really beautiful saying that we have here in Acoma and Karis, and one of our elders reminded us, and there's a lot even in just that little saying, this little bits of phrases and words. Shrami meaning do it right, do it in a good way. Shrami naya fruits on the is basic to do things in a collaborative way, as one, as a community working together, and to do things respectfully. And so I think that's what we see in our systems, in our lives, in our communities, especially in the people that have been here the longest, in acknowledging the knowledge and the intricacies and the reasons for those systems there that maybe indigenous people and land-based people have. And so just thank you all for the time, and I hope that we all can care for our lands and soils, because we need them. And soil is one of those, finite resources that we know now that is alive. And on my culture, that's what they teach us, is that it's alive, it's a living being. The term animism is what I think they say in English. So we give life to everything, every living being, everything, even the inanimate objects that we say don't have a life to them. And so to treat things with respect. And I always use the analogy of what my uncle gave me of seeds. And so that's why I specialize in seeds. And so that really informed a lot of the way I approach things, and a lot of ways I caretake things, again, that biomimicry. And what he said to me this was after he scolded me one time because I had not been in my field for about 2 weeks. And I was sort of giving up because my plants weren't producing like I was hoping they would. And he came to my house, knocked on my door, sat me down. And he said, what you did out there is not something we do. It's part of here. It's part of our culture. When you said you wanted to grow, he told me that I gave you seed and we gave you that land so that you can take care of it. It's a responsibility you have. Those beings that you put in there are in the soil, our mother, are just like the kids in their mother's belly, and they'll eventually come out and produce. And they'll eventually grow into teenagers, they'll grow into adults, and they'll grow, and then they'll go back into the land like we will. That corn and those plants on there are living, breathing things, and you need to take care of them like that. He said, those are your children. You created children down there, and he said, you never leave your children. You never abandon what you've been inherited to caretake. And so for me, even in this picture I'm showing you right here, to me, this encapsulates all of that. You can see the rain, the clouds, the waters, the lands. You can see in the finer scale, you can see the insects and the birds. And you can see the three sisters, the corns, the bean, the squash, as well as amaranth and sunflowers working together in tandem, because they all depend on each other and they support one another. And so I hope this is what Jackie had in mind when I wanted to go into this keynote speech. And so thank you all for listening to me. Thank you all for giving me the time. And again, Shrami Naya Fruits on the Kuturs, Shrami Shi Wamahopa, Dawar Gold number, Shriwa number T. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Aaron. You really set this up beautifully. Really appreciate that. We will now go into our breakout groups and take these words with us in our hearts and let us guide them.
Before we enter the breakout groups, I just want to ask you to abide by a few rules just to be courteous to the people participating in the groups. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Be respectful of one another's time. If you tend to talk a lot, try to step back. If you're a quiet person, please step up. We want to hear your thoughts. That's why we've invited you here. And use the chat box if needed. We also ask that you use I statements. We want to hear about what you're bringing to the table and what you can contribute. I'm going to start the breakout groups. You'll see a little pop-up box come up. Click OK. If you're on the phone, I will just automatically put you in there, so you don't need to worry about it. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'm calling everyone back. Hope you had a little break and time to let percolate what you've talked about in your breakout groups. And we're really looking forward to hearing from each other and hearing how that went for you. So I'll just go down my list of breakout group facilitators, and you will tell me if you share or who your note taker was, and we'll hear back from you. So let's start with Megan's group. Who from your group would like to share out what you guys talked about?
Hi everyone. We had a really great group. Anybody in my group who wants to jump in, feel free. But we really had a good discussion just about everybody sort of had similar things going on with regenerative ag, and really emphasized the importance of bringing knowledge through the community and to the community. And we had kind of a diverse group of people that are doing different things, and we all have such great things that we can bring to the table working in regenerative ag, farming, seeding. We have people that can bring groups of producers with buyers together. So that was just the main emphasis that I think we came to, is that there was a lot of emphasis and need for the community to share knowledge with each other. Another great thing that happened in our group was almost everybody was more than happy to go to a workshop and join in and help complete farming activities to get to work. So everybody in our group wanted to work. And quite a few people in our group also were willing to host workshops or share opportunities of workshops that are already coming up. So that was a really awesome thing that we came to. And anybody that was in our group that would like to share, please join in.
Sounds like a really lively conversation, but now everybody's shy.
I think Chile might have something.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Chile.
Yes, Isabel and Megan did a good job in sheep herding us along. So we had a good conversation. I just want to appreciate Aaron for his very excellent presentation earlier today. And that really brings to light the fact that regenerative agriculture is not a new concept. It's a process that's been practiced by generations and generations of indigenous farmers for centuries. And I think that to give that further appreciation, I want to share with the group, as Isabel has been part of the group, where our conversation has been about sharing what we call the indigenous perspective. And I just want to have the group know that I am making a presentation on February the 24th at noon during the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association's conference. And I will be doing my best to give a presentation on the indigenous perspective, which will tie together the way, the cultural and the spiritual manner in how we do our agriculture. So I'm just inviting everybody to that session on February 24 at noon. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel.
Great. Well, thank you, Julie. And so that we'll put that on our calendar as the next opportunity to get together. Really appreciate it. Right. I'll move on to Matt and Bianca's group.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let Bianca report out here, given that she was our wonderful scribe.
Hi, folks. Yeah, so everyone contributed, and it seemed as if there was a range of skill sets, from having an entire farm to doing backyard composting. So I'll just go through the 4 different points from our 4 participants. James Skeet, who did our invocation, he invited folks to his farm, which is also a nonprofit. Becky is having a community event, building a hoop house in her valley, which is awesome. Caro found out that wedding paper is better when you use it as mulch. And Kao Hyung talked about different compost methods, so bokashi versus traditional. So we got into some specifics and also talked about community events happening in northern New Mexico. So does that capture it all, Matthew?
Yeah, just want to reemphasize the wealth of knowledge that everyone brought to the table. And of course, everyone was able to learn something from everyone, which was probably the most important thing moving forward. And of course, my hat's off to everyone who participated in our group.
Fantastic. Thank you. Leilani and Despa, how did your group go?
Yeah, so I was moderating the group, the breakout sessions. And so Leilani took the notes. Leilani, do you want to go ahead and give your report?
Sure, I can. Thank you, Despa. So within our group, we had 4 wonderful participants, and they touched on the aspects of hoping to grow food to be more self-sustaining, also building up their soil with compost and bioreactors, and also the reminder of the greenhouse and always constantly producing food within the greenhouse. Soil health is important, and to train the people with small community gardens and incorporate cover crops. Also mentioned was planting different crops in areas for biodiversity, utilizing the water the best way possible, and working with the community, and then also incorporating the knowledge to help us move forward and produce enough for ourselves and our community. And that compost has a large amount of good materials, and also a few of them also mentioned too the importance of emphasizing the soil health principles. And then also we do have a few of the participants who are interested in attending a field trip, and a few who want to, or who don't necessarily have the access to a bigger space, but are wanting to support and help put on if there was a workshop or field day. So that's what we have for our group there. And of course, we'll love to open it up to the group if they want to add anything as well.
Yeah, that sounds like you captured it all. Thank you, Leilani. Some really great themes here. So I'm going on to shantou and Kyle's group.
Yeah, our group made it really easy for us, really easy for Kyle. I was just taking the notes. But I'd just like to echo the resonance. I think we had a lot of groups, or the members in our group are a lot of facilitators and a lot of teachers, a lot of knowledge keepers who are willing to share that information with, some of the younger generations, as well as offering up their spaces, their, sort of organizations that they work part of, or, experiences with other farming sort of apprenticeships as well. So, what the group had offered up was just a resounding echoing of just sharing information to young people, as well as one of our members, I believe Rita Snyder, was talking about exploring solar voltaic agriculture and finding innovative solutions to, sort of applying that to different spaces and making scalable projects. So if you're interested in that, reach out to Rita Snyder, as well as, I believe, Dan Jerry has a Montanza coming up this Saturday. That's a ticketed event, and it's going to be happening at the Agro Futures place over in Rio Rancho, Albuquerque. So thank you all. And if anybody from our group, if you'd like to add to the synopsis here, please do.
Yeah, and Dan, maybe you can put a link in the chat to the Matanza from the Agri Nature Center, because that's going to be a great event for sure. I love how it is just like everything is happening here. That's fantastic. All right, so my group is next. Judith, would you like to share out?
I'll give it a try, and please jump in, anybody who's in our group. We had a very diverse group, and it was including Zach, who works at the Santa Fe Community College and runs their greenhouse programs, and also is working on recirculating agriculture as well as regenerative agriculture, including working with algae, which is very interesting. Jeremy in Socorro, who develops compost and compost tea, and is planning to start in the state of New Mexico, a lab where they could do more live soil analysis, I think, and study the microbes in the soil. Gabrielle, who is down in the Mortarity area and is planning to start a regenerative agricultural farm there. And then we also had a wonderful I Ching reading from Stan. And in addition, Isabella gave us a little more background on her organization and some of the work that they're doing. Anybody want to add anything, please do.
Go ahead, Landpack, maybe you wanted to say something? No, I think that's summed it up pretty good. I was particularly struck by members in our group who were new to farming, new to New Mexico even, and this is definitely something that I've seen in this work as a through line. Young people, youngish people, new farmers who are really called to this work, and who are perhaps a little bit unencumbered by existing ways of doing things. And so they can start fresh, and they embrace soil health and regenerative agriculture as the way to go right from the start. And it's honestly, it's something that gives me a lot of hope. And I just love to see that. So we had those kinds of people in our group, which was wonderful. And then also a poet, right? And that speaks to the culture in agriculture, and that it's not just about soil health, and it's not just about financial return and building a responsible business, but it's also about being in community, being together, sharing a culture, sharing spiritual practice perhaps, or inspirational ideas is all connected to regenerative, this what we call regenerative agriculture. So thanks, Judith, and thank you to everybody in our group. It was a really great conversation. Moving to Ian's group.
Hi, everybody. First, thanks to everybody in my group. It was a lovely, small conversation and really great to meet 5 or 6 new people. We had a pretty diverse group. A through line was that I think everybody had land, either family land that they were returning to, or land near where they've lived for a long time that they were returning to or beginning to steward, but that was under that they had and they were looking to learn to take care of. And so lots of people excited about going on this journey with this piece of land, whether it be less than an acre or a backyard up to 10 or a dozen acres. And so lots of interesting experience too, folks that had left and come back, and some important through lines was that health through eating healthy food, internal body health, health for community by doing work together, whether the community garden or school garden, feeling the challenges, lots of challenges expressed, but I feel like everyone must have had a certain level of hope by showing up and opening up. And another through line through our talking, our discussion that gave me hope is that this is a return. We're not creating new knowledge, but we're returning to the work, to the knowledge, to the organization that we're supposed to be doing, returning to our mother, rematriation, and that by becoming place-based again, we can feel good and be happy and be better. Yeah, I think it was a nice, quick little chat, and I good luck to all my group members in seeking out the information they need and the community support and all their projects.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Rob, would you like to go next?
Yes, just quickly, I would say that some vital points that came up with our group are how vital soil health principles are, and education support for producers is critical, and the idea of healthy soil requiring healthy communities, and so we need to work on our relationships. And another relationship that's vital is our relationship with water, and how seemingly small things like the tightness of corn husks can make a powerful difference, and that everyone can play a helpful role in this regenerative agriculture space. And one of those people is Amanda, who volunteered to share some points to the group, and we really appreciate that. So if Amanda wants to chime in, that would be awesome.
Thanks, Rob. I guess that was a nice synopsis. I have a few other things. The techniques that we discussed included cover crops, greenhouses, compost, biochar, compost teas, regionally adapted crops, having water consciousness, and crop rotation. We talked about the challenges of cultural divides and herbicides and manure and drought conditions. And then the more cultural solutions that we talked about were uplifting the leaders that we would like to see, telling people stories of successes in these realms, philanthropy, teaching techniques, and matanzas and other local cultural gatherings.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Wonderful. Charlene, please go next.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say I had a great group of educators and resources. Somehow I wound up with all the NMDA folks in our group, which is really great to hear from them. Also, I had Christine Salem, who is working, and actually what I found really interesting, I didn't know, is we had a group here working with heritage grains and working with producers in that aspect. And then also Nessa, who's representing the New Mexico chapter Soil and Water Conservation Society, but she also works with Forest Service too. So again, we had a great, I think, representation of educators and resources. But I'm going to turn the floor over to Katie because she is our note taker, and she's going to give us a summary. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. I'm going to pull up my notes. And going last gives you a chance to refine them, so lucky me. I heard Charlene say that with the Southern Pueblo, she provides technical assistance and works collaboratively with producers, youth, and families. So she's always working to couple soil health to their traditional practices, whether we're talking ancient cultural practice or generations of practice within the family. So I thought that was a really great point she brought to the floor. Christine, in working with those ancient and inherited grains, looks to them and promotes them as being better than modern varieties in terms of their drought resistance and making use of limited water. So she's working to connect all the various parties within her existing networks, which she referred to as the grain chain. Nessa is, from her vantage point at the Forest Service, bringing soil health awareness to ranchers on public lands and sharing ideas within her existing network. So sharing ideas back to that Soil and Water Conservation Society and with the Forest Service, a reminder of the roles we occupy within our existing networks. Max makes sure that because he hears a lot about cropland and its role within soil health, that rangeland also gets brought to the fore. So when he's participating in policy and planning projects here at NMDA, he makes sure that soil health is part of the conversation. And as part of that, he really appreciates hearing the nuts and bolts details of implementation from actual producers. So bringing things down kind of from the rafters and hearing about actual implementation of cover cropping and compost application, things like that. I'm lucky that Dina's my co-lead on the Healthy Soil program. He's got a very technical resource management background. So and still works as a farmer in addition to working full-time at NMDA. So his role, he says, is to bring together what sometimes feels like two separate audiences, the regenerative audience and a conventional audience. There's way more in common between these two groups than each one might appreciate when separate. So bridging that a chasm that shouldn't exist there, and making sure that land managers are at the center of the conversation, offering their input and really acknowledging some of the difficulties of implementing soil health practices. And the only thing I had to add to the conversation was I really appreciate attending different events hosted by different parties. NMDA's Healthy Soil program can't pull all parties together. We are so glad to work with the Healthy Soil Working Group and to look to other partners in State Land Office and all the various parties, the Intertribal Agriculture Council and First Nations Development Institute. All these different parties have it takes all of our parties to pull together everyone. So just again, bringing together those different groups of people to have the same conversation on soil health. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Katie. And I just want to say how exceptional this is to have the Department of Agriculture here, right? Isn't that awesome? And how invested they are in soil health and regenerative agriculture. So it's pretty special, you all. The next group to share would be Claudia and Camilla.
Perfect. So we had an amazing group and instantly found some really fun and exciting connections across forestry and youth. And Camila was our note taker, so she'll go ahead and take over from here.
One thing the group concentrated on was composting. That was one of our big topics. Also, working with the youth and, and networking, and also along with the group was with the youth was, finding transportation for the youth so they can, go to different field visits and, just be taken around to different areas so that, we're talking about, some of the challenges we had Also, we have, you know, a lot of folks are willing to host field trips or, you know, just be a part of field trips. So our group, yeah, our group brought, you know, a lot of different ideas. One of them that I like is Shirley Treehill. She worked for Taos Pueblo and from Taos Pueblo, and, you know, and teaching the youth about native plants. That, you know, that was a big thing. And she is also a fellow like Seed Care, and I'm just trying to think of other ones, and Guardians of the Seed, which I found very interesting. Let's see, we had John Zarola, and he also teaches classes on composting. So, you know, if anyone needed, you know, a class, he's, you know, willing to provide. He's out of Bernalillo and Sandoval County. So, you know, those were a couple of things that, you know, stuck out for us. Another thing we found was wanting to do more improvements on the land, but, you know, finding funding, you know, throughout. So, you know, one of the things we want to do is working on networking. So then maybe each of us can share each other's stories on, you know, how we get funding so we can implement different projects in our area. So and if anyone else wants to jump in or, you know, add to this from our group.
Thank you, Camila, Claudia, that's great. And last but not least, Jackie's group.
Thanks, Isabel. Yeah, like everyone else, we had a great group. Lots of conversation. Scott and Julie Bennett were in our group. Amy Larson from the Quivira Coalition, Danny Sandoval from the New Mexico Land Department, Seisha McGee, who's a farmer, and then we had Elaine Sullivan, who was such a great community person who was shared with us a little information on the Alliance for, and I hope I get this right. I just lost it. Sorry, I just lost the name of Alliance for Economic.
Prosperity, I think.
Huh?
Prosperity, I think.
Prosperity, thank you.
It was the Alliance.
Public bank people, yes.
Alliance for Economic Prosperity, yes.
For local economic prosperity. Alliance for Local Economic Prosperity. Elaine
Yes.
Sullivan, 505-988-9708.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So as I'm going through our list, please, team, feel free to chime in. I think some of the things that was shared and what they are seeing in the field and what they are experiencing. One is New Mexico is land rich, but it's hard to find young farmers who want to work the land. Scott and Julie shared their experience, how they had a woman who was farming their land for 3 seasons, but it came to a point where she couldn't afford to farm anymore. She had a CSA and she worked with 35 farmers. Now the community has lost a CSA. And so she had to go back to work because it just wasn't affordable. Some of other things, other comments where we really need to find strategies to support farmers. Julie shared with us a program in Santa Fe County called the Transferable Development Rights Program, which many people don't know about, but it's a way to prevent land from being developed. But one of the things they did share in all their experience was there seems to be the programs available, but the implementation is not as clear or understandable. So a lot of people are not aware of this program. Other comments were farmers need access to education, resources, and equipment, including grant funds. Again, sharing Elaine's comments about the Alliance for Local Economic Prosperity. They're looking and evaluating, exploring different models to support farmers and working lands in New Mexico. So those were just some of the things they're seeing in the field and experiencing. Other things that they felt would be really beneficial is to create a working group where acequia users, producers, and state agencies can come together and have conversations, identify ways to let people know that they are buying irrigated land. In many instances, people don't even recognize or know that they're buying irrigated land, and they're not sure if that should be from the real estate, from the realtor. They don't understand, they're coming to New Mexico. They don't recognize the importance of the water resources here in New Mexico. Providing education for water-wise farming practices would be really helpful, and connecting farmers to land. Again, great group. They were all willing to share. I asked them, are you willing to present? All of them put their hands up. Are you willing to go to field trips? They all put their hands up. So this is just a great group with a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, who are working in their communities and really understand, I think, some of the issues that are around working lands and soil health. So it was really great having those conversations with you all. Does anyone in my breakout group want to add anything that I left off? Scott, Julie, Amy, Danny, Seisha, Elaine?
Thank you, Jackie, for moderating it. I think you did a good job of of keeping the conversation moving and covering a lot of ground. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all the facilitators in the groups. Sounds like very fruitful conversations, and we look forward to continuing what we started today. With that, we just basically say thank you all, and we just heard so much wisdom in the room, and another theme perhaps was back to the future. So we will be in touch. Hopefully it won't be a whole year this time, because we heard so many good events that are happening, and we will definitely be in touch about a field day that we will hold with one of you here. And just want to say thank you for spending this afternoon with us. And thank you for all your good work. Thank you for caring. Thank you for caring of the land and of each other. So with that, thank you all.
Thank you to all the partners and participants. That was great.